All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. We're just about 30 seconds early, but that's okay. My name's Dave Patrick. This is my talk, Intro to Power BI. I work for a company called DSA Incorporated, Data Systems Analysts. We're a Department of Defense contractor over in the U.S. I'm on the east coast of the U.S. in a place called Maryland. I work at a place called Aberdeen Proving Ground. I also run a user group called Mad SharePoint. We meet virtually now. We used to meet hybrid, but now we do, due to the pandemic, we're virtual. So anyone from around the world can attend our meetings. Go to madsharepoint.com for more information. We like to talk about how SharePoint makes us happy, how SharePoint makes us sad or mad. That's why we call ourselves Mad SharePoint. Sometimes we're mad about it, sometimes we're mad at it. So check us out, madsharepoint.com. All right, let's jump into it. What is Power BI? We're going to talk about what it is, the different pieces and parts, and how to get started with it. So what is it? It's a collection of software, services, apps, and connectors. Works with all sorts of sources of data, not just related data, but also non-related data. And it allows you to easily and quickly create visually immersive and interactive insights. And those two are important. Interactive. How many times I work for the Army, and I don't know how many times someone's asked for like a printed report, but it's much more than that. This is interactive. They can click and drill through and find all sorts of information. So what are the parts of Power BI? So there's the Power BI desktop. That's the tool that you download and install on your machine. That is Windows only. So part of what I do is I'm also an adjunct professor, and I teach at a lot of the universities in my local, in Maryland. And I have a lot of Mac students, and that's one. And I part of my courses is we teach Power BI. It's one of the tools that we learn in some of the data courses. And the Mac students are like, well, I can't download it. So we do make them use a visual or a virtual machine in Azure to do that. So if for any Mac users out there and you're like, oh man, I can't download Power BI desktop, believe me, there's easy ways to access it that are not hard to do at all. But there's Power BI desktop. That's an app that you download and runs on your desktop. There's the Power BI service that runs in the browser, and then you can be a Mac or Windows or Linux or whatever that runs in the browser, and we'll go over that in a little more detail. And then there's the app that runs on your phone, so Android, iOS, and that's really cool, especially for a lot of my CEOs, my generals, my colonels, the upper level management. They love to just be able to grab their iPad or their phone and just get a quick KPI. What's this a key performance indicator? Are things going up? Are they going down? And the Power BI mobile app is great for that kind of thing. So there's one more tool that I like to mention, which is the Power BI report server. That is basically you can share your Power BI reports on premises. So typically people use the Power BI service in the cloud to share the reports, but in a situation like mine where we work for the Army and we're #cloud cautious, so we're very security conscious. We like to keep our arms around our data. We like to put gates up around our data. The Power BI report server is one way for us to share our reports through and on premises without having to go to the cloud. And that's a really cool tool to be able to do that, to have that in our toolbox. So what are some parts of the Power BI? I mentioned the desktop, software as a service, the Power BI service. I mentioned the mobile app, and I mentioned the Power BI report server. This pretty much is the main 4 parts of Power BI. Now, what is it geared towards? Obviously, there's a couple different audiences that use Power BI. There's consumers. These are people like my CEOs, my generals, my colonels that are just trying to get information. They want to know, is attendance up at certain events? Has all the mandatory training been taken or not? These are some of the real world scenarios that we use Power BI to report on. Then there's Power BI desktop for designers. That's people who have to build those visualizations and those dashboards for the consumers. And we'll go over how that tool is used to get data and build some of those visualizations. Then there's Power BI for administrators, where you're assigning licenses to different the consumers and the designers. There's also Power BI for developers. That's where you can actually build little components from Power BI that you might embed with your app. So there's all sorts of information. This is our quick lightning talk just to introduce you and make you aware of this. In my slides, which I'll make available, there's links to all this for more information about all these different audiences and how you can get started with, depending on which hat you're wearing. We're going to dig in real quick a little bit to some of these Power BI for consumers. Again, this is being able to go to powerbi.com and read up on data and do a little bit of interactivity and maybe even set up some reports. what can you do? There's visualizations, there's data sets, there's reports, there's dashboards, there's tiles. This is a great link. Microsoft Learn, if you haven't heard of it, people think it's documentation. It's way more than documentation. I'm going to bring up this link real quick. What it does is Microsoft Learn gives you hands-on labs, sandboxes, Azure credits, exam preparation. So in this particular learning path, there's a module. The learning paths are like college courses, and each module is like a week of college. This particular module, there's different units where you can walk through and get started with building, Power BI reports. And it talks about what each thing is, like the visualizations. There's some examples, some of the different visualizations. This is an example of a data set that someone pulled in from a database. This is an example of one of the reports that you can pin to a dashboard. And then the reports contain visualizations. So here's, a bar graph, and there's all sorts of different, if you see over here on the right, there's all sorts of different kinds of visualizations that you can choose from. These are some of the out-of-the-box visualizations. You can see there's some based on Python, some based on R, sort of the standard pie charts and things that you would expect. And you can also do custom visualizations. You can build your own custom visualizations, or you can access ones that other people have built. Dashboards, we mentioned, that's where you're taking some of these visualizations and reports, and you're pinning them together to make a nice storyboard, a nice dashboard. This is what my CEOs and generals and colonels love. They want to, quickly get those, what percent market share do we have? What's the current volume? And let me know the trends. Are we going up? Or are we going down? So there's Power BI can give you all that. And if you go through one of these modules, it'll actually take you on a tour of building one of those. Let's actually do a demo ourselves. So we're going to jump in here and look at a Power BI dashboard. We'll look at the app versus a dashboard. We'll use the Q&A report. We'll look at subscribing to a report and exporting data to Excel. So we'll jump out here. It's a lot. We'll see if we can get through all this. So here we are. I went to powerbi.com. I signed in with my Office 365 account, Power BI integrated and part of Office 365. And here's some of those dashboards and data sets and reports that I talked about. So if I click on one of these dashboards, this is one I built for my company called DSA Jobs. And it's a listing. It actually reads data from a company called Job Diva. So it's a website out there. So I'm actually screen scraping, or, my source of data here is a website. Power BI can connect to different websites and ingest that data. And then from there, I've got it broken down into, I got some visualizations. This one is by state. It looks like most of our jobs are in Virginia. We've got 37 jobs in Virginia. And then because these states are recognized as geographic entities, I can actually use a mapping visualization to see those jobs by location. So now I can come in here, and then this is Power BI on the web, works in Windows, works in the Mac. I can come in here and click on the different, this is that interactivity that we get. So as I click on each state, I get different which cities that we have jobs in. If I click on a different city, it'll jump to focus to where, that what particular state we're in. A lot of times, one of my favorite things is that my users sometimes get lost in the sauce, so to speak, where they have to do that reset the default. If they're clicking around too much and they're like, oh no, I've messed up the system, that reset the default allows them to kind of get back to basics, back to where they started. So again, a really cool feature of Power BI is to be able to kind of go in there, slice and dice, play around, and not worry about having to mess up the report. So another thing that is nice about Power BI and dashboards is that you can ask questions about your data. So as a consumer, I can come in here and say, well, what I was seeing was not what I wanted. I really wanted to know how many states we deal with. And look, it even gives me some of these questions to try. So it looks like we've got jobs in 9 different states. What if I wanted to see jobs by title? Maybe I want to see, we already saw jobs by state, but what if I want to see how many jobs by title? And again, it gives me sort of IntelliSense where it knows the different entities or I should say attributes that are in my data set, and then say jobs by state, by city. So again, it kind of helps you and figures out, oh, this is what you might be looking for. And then depending on how you ask the question, now do count. might present a visualization. So Power BI, it tries to use that artificial intelligence. Look at that. It realized now I'm doing some aggregation, I'm doing counting, and instead of just showing me the data, it's not only showing them in a bar graph, it's actually showing them sorted, so I can see the most, looks like we're looking for 7 different senior SharePoint administrators. So a lot of great power right in the Power BI service. Another for consumers is importing data. So if I'm back out here to the site and I want to get, maybe I don't have the data that I want to look to investigate yet, you can use this get data. Now there's a little trick here. If you go in here to databases from the Power BI service, it's going to just tell you, go get desktop, go get desktop, go get desktop. So it's a little tricky there. But if you're pulling data in from a file, whether it's your OneDrive or a SharePoint site or even a local file, it will be able to open up, things like Excel files and things like that. And I've already done one. It takes a second to load. But once you load them, then they show up in your data sets. So there, you can see I've got some world cities, comma separated file, a retail analysis sample. These are some of the data that I've pulled in from different places, all in my current workspace. And I kind of skipped over the workspace thing, but you can have lots of different workspaces. So it's just a way of grouping your reports and your data sets and all that. So I'm in at this point, I'm in my DSA workspace, and you can see I've got different reports and different data sets and different dashboards as part of that. Now, what about Power BI Desktop for designers? This is really where you get the most power, the most flexibility, where you want to connect up all sorts of different data. You want to be able to not only load the data, but do ETL, extract, transform, and load, where you want to maybe take one column and split it into 2 columns, or maybe there's some data inside one of the columns you have to pull out, or maybe you have to change it from a text to a number, or maybe the first row is headers. So all that kind of transformation, Power BI Desktop does a fantastic job, not only of allowing you to visually set that up, but also remembering everything that you did and repeating that every time you have to refresh the data. So it will also, as it reads data, if it's relational, if it will detect relationships and create that data model, it'll detect visuals that are, recommend visuals. So as you're just clicking on things, it'll say, hey, maybe this should be a bar graph, maybe this should be a pie chart. It's very easy to then put those on reports and then publish them to the Power BI service to turn them into dashboards. So let's take a quick look at some of these reports, data models, and dashboards in the Power BI Desktop. We're going to go and show you. Now, this is based on, this particular demo is based on, again, a Microsoft Learn article that, again, I recommend you guys go out and check it out, where you create and share your first Power BI report. And as you walk through, I think they said this is like a 55-minute module. We're going to go through it in about 2 minutes. You can see it shows you where to download the Power BI Desktop, what it looks like when you first get started, how to go through the 3 different views, the data view, or the visuals view, the data view, and the data model, and walks you through getting the different kinds of data, Excel, Power BI data sets, SQL Server, Dataverse, all sorts of one web. In this particular example, it does pull data from a website called bankrate.com, and then from there, it goes through doing that ETL that I talked about, where you're pulling in data, you're changing the data type from maybe a number to a text to a number, you're pulling data from an HTML table, you're using the first row as headers, and then you're presenting that data
David,
visually on a report. Yeah.
I'm afraid you're out of time.
All right, I saw I had 2 minutes left, but we'll go jump to the end. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. If you have questions, hit me up at David E. Patrick on Twitter. If you want more information about my company, there's a link for that too. Thank you.